Hello, everyone, and welcome to Seriously Loco, the Seriously Crazy fan podcast for El Paso Locomotive FC. I am your host, Phil Bakke. I'm joined tonight by my co-host, Mika Burrell. Mika, how's your Monday?
You know, it's not been too bad. I mean, Mondays are Mondays, but I feel like we've had a stroke of good luck today. Like, a lot of nice little good things have been happening, and I mean, talking about a win tonight is one of them, so I can't complain. How's your Monday been? Yeah,
like you said, it's been, I don't know, weird, like, little, I guess, coincidences and little come-ups on a Monday, which are rare, I feel like. So trying to enjoy this for what it was, which just like W Monday, and which is fitting after a W by Locomotive. We're joined also by Christian Canales. Christian, welcome. How's similarly, was it a W Monday?
Was a D Monday, I'll say.
A draw Monday? Okay.
You know, it was a person, you know, like individually it was just another. It was a kind of a little bit of a rough day, but collectively for the same reasons as a couple of us, you know, small wins in the Seriously Loco group. So
yeah,
I'll take it.
Some wins, some losses. Yeah, for those who are finding us for the first time, just to cover some of the admin, you can find us on any major podcast platform. You can also check us out on Patreon. We've got some written work up there, patreon.com/seriouslyloco. So consider checking us out over there. Ideally, there will be a tactical takeaways coming up from the win in Louisville. I don't only write about losses, so but travels this weekend limited my writing. So just keep an eye out for that. And then admin wise, I think that is probably it. Although we will have, I guess I should say, we will likely have the return of the Seriously Loco watch-alongs for away games this Friday when Locomotive take on Tulsa. So hoping to watch along there. It'll be live on Twitch, Twitter, and YouTube. So follow along on your favorite platform, and you'll be able to tune in there. But without further ado, Christian, we've got you back on the show from the start, and there is no other way that we would start such an episode but with Christian's question. So what do you got for us tonight?
Happy to do it. So before I start, we're all caught up as far as like season 2 of Ted Lasso, right?
Yes.
Like everyone's watched season 1 and 2. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Just want to make sure we're on the same page there. So my question today is, what character on Ted Lasso do you relate most to?
Phil, you gotta go first. I'm interested.
Oh man, which one do I relate most to? I think,
and it can be like even like a minor character too, like if that's where your head's going.
I'm having trouble narrowing it down. It's a really good question because I feel like there are parts of relatability across the characters, which is what makes it such a good show. I mean, honestly, early on in season 1, before, you know, and no spoilers for later on, but I feel like Nate would have been like relatable in certain aspects just because of the, I think for anyone who's like, whatever felt, you know, underappreciated in a job or something like that, that's like something that we can all relate to. Maybe not in the same villain arc way that Nate eventually did, but or I don't know. There's Roy too, because Roy, I don't know, sometimes we all lose our shit a little bit and need to blow up, vent. I don't know. There's pieces of a few characters I feel like I relate to. What about you, Mika? I'm curious.
This is hard. I don't know if I relate to anyone necessarily. I do have my favorites. I mean, I love Rebecca. I think it's so funny that she like the whole show exists because she's trying to like spite her husband. I mean, I think that's really funny that like something that came out of spite can actually be a good thing. I guess relate. I don't know. Maybe Trent Crimmins, the Independent. I guess I can relate in the fact that I can be a bit of a soccer snob at times. And he can be pretty snobby, but I think he means well. I think he's just a real serious journalist. But I don't know. That's probably a little bit of a stretch, but
I like the Trent Krim answer.
Yeah. So, what about you, Christian?
Well, much like Phil said, there's kind of a build your own, kind of thing where there's like pieces you want to pick. Because I feel like, and I've been like this for a lot of my life, I feel like I'm kind of like a chameleon. Like my personality changes depending on who I'm around a lot. But I think like around those like super close to me and those who see me a lot, because I feel like the three of us are like close, but we don't necessarily spend a lot of time together, like besides podcasts and games and stuff. And that requires like a personality all on its own. But like deep inside, I feel like I'm very much like Roy, because I'm very introverted. I don't express myself a whole lot. Like Martha hates it about me, but like trying to get me to talk about my feelings with her is like pulling teeth sometimes. But I think that like deep down inside, like I've got like a good heart. So I relate to a lot of the things that Roy says and how he deals with people, and like sometimes like you just don't want to talk to stupid people. And so that's how I feel a lot of the time. So I would go with Roy personally, but I think
Fair
the
enough.
listeners should let us know too how they feel about it, because like Phil said, it's a good show.
I haven't started season 3 yet because I'm a cheap bastard and I'm waiting for it all to come out so I can pay for Apple TV for like less than a month.
Make a
Binge
fake email address and get a 7-day free trial.
I should, right? That's too much pressure though.
I will say, like, Apple TV doesn't need me doing commercials for them, and I'm not getting paid to do this, obviously, but, like, I will say that another show on Apple TV Plus, Shrinking. Is so good. Like, it is also worth
Really?
the price of
Great.
admission.
Now I have FOMO. Now I'm going to go get Apple TV. Great.
Jason Segel, Harrison Ford, our therapists in California. It is amazing. It's so good.
Fair
And
enough.
very Ted Lasso-y vibes, because Brett Goldschmidt, who is Roy Kent, Goldstein. I say Goldschmidt. Sorry.
Yeah.
Brett Goldstein is an executive producer and like helped create it and stuff. So anyways, like it has Ted Lasso-y vibes, even if it's a little bit, I would say it's more adult.
Less whimsical.
Yeah,
Okay.
but it is it's a little darker than Ted Lasso, but it has similar like uplifting vibes at times. So, yeah.
Fair enough.
If you're looking for a reason to another reason to get Apple TV. But yeah. No other reasons to get Apple TV, just to be clear.
None whatsoever.
Can't think of another one. The Seriously Loco match review. Guys, I mean, we do have like good news to talk about. Speaking of whimsy, we've got 3 points on the road at Louisville at what is now known affectionately as the Loco Family Stadium. This game, obviously coming into it like last week, I feel like we were all pretty low on our chances of coming away with the points in Louisville. There's a number of things that we'll get into about how the game played out, how things went, but in terms of like general impressions and just like how you guys felt about this matchup and how it did actually transpire in front of us, what were your big takeaways for what was different about about Locomotive coming out against Louisville, and what do you think are those like big factors that led to us walking away with a win?
It's obviously it's great. It's great to just get the monkey off the back of like your first 3 points and having a strong showing on the road. But it's it reminds me of actually this kitchen appliance that I just bought recently. I just bought an Instant Pot. And like this game was our Instant Pot in that we like forcibly relieved the pressure. Like we just turned the valve right off. We're not waiting. It just felt like that. Like the boys were playing like completely, maybe not completely, but like mostly unrestricted, uninhibited. And I think we kind of chatted about that last time we spoke, about how maybe this is kind of like a free hit, as much as a game against Louisville away can be one, you know, but Eastern Conference foe, like, you know, big club, big atmosphere, big stadium, lots of fans, champions, you know, of the Eastern Conference. All of those things you would think would pile on the pressure, but then you think about it and it's kind of like what Lucha Soloniak said at the end of the press conference last time that the boys were home, and like we're glad that we're playing a team this big because we could just go out there and do our thing. Like we already know it's gonna be a test, but at least we won't go out there being complacent. And maybe the same can't be said for Louisville. So yeah, it just felt like a big like pressure valve was released and we were just able to express ourselves and perform and have fun. The boys looked like they were having fun. So we do watch this sport for entertainment and joy after all. And it gave me all of those. So
Christian, I guess to that point, like them playing without pressure and those sorts of things, it seemed like the team was focused on a game plan. And I mean, in terms of a road performance against such a good team, it really did feel like about as good as you can be in terms of limiting chances for them and also being absolutely ruthless in front of goal at the other end.
Yeah, like our best 60 minutes against Detroit, our best like 45 minutes against Colorado, our best whatever it was against who did we open the season against? I'm blanking.
Sac Republic.
Sac Republic. You know, it was all our best moments from those games spread out across 90, which is what I think is the biggest difference. You know, we were the better team for a good amount of the game, and when we got the chances, you know, we took advantage. I think that's the biggest difference from the first 3 games is, you know, there were goals to be had. You know, in those first 3 games we scored 2. I'm forgetting the score lines from the first 3 games. Or just 1. 2 across the first 3. Yeah, out of like what could have been like 6, you know. And on Saturday we just capitalized on all of those, almost all of them, because it might have even been like 5-0 with a little more luck too. So I think that's the biggest difference is, you know, they were on the whole time, and whether you call it luck or whatever, the shots were going in, and the shots have been there. There's been a good amount of chances created over this first part of the season, and it's just a matter of them going in, and they did this weekend.
With the start of our discussion about this match in Louisville, we have a series of listener questions that are going to guide us throughout. So I want to first give a shout out to thanks to everyone who submitted questions this week via Twitter. I think Twitter led the line this week in terms of question asking, but we're also on Instagram, and if you ask it either, when you see our tweet or story go out about recording, we'll likely talk about your questions on the podcast. So one of the questions to kind of start this conversation off about this win in Louisville, at One Star Galileo on Twitter, just asked for thoughts on the lineup against Lou City. He specifically called out, to me, Borelli needs to always be in the starting 11. The team needs to play with that same intensity they showed at Lou for every match. They looked fearless. we talked about like the composure. We talked about maybe them playing with a little less fear. But in terms of the personnel involved, Mika, like what did you make of how we started this one? Because there were a couple of like minor tweaks.
Yeah, I mean it's nothing in this lineup really surprised me necessarily. I think some of these changes were predictable. I mean, especially the Borelli change because, as we talked about last time, Brian had it in mind to maybe experiment with Eder there instead of Nick, who has had some good moments and has had some more challenging ones in the opening 3 matches. So, and we knew that Borelli came on in that second half against Colorado Springs Switchbacks probably with an eye to starting this game. So it's funny because I think that, and I don't mean to call the question out necessarily or the person asking the question, but I think there's a lot being made of Borelli coming into the 11 and us winning. I just would caution against causation versus correlation. I think actually there's probably an argument that he's like our least impactful player on the night, and I hope I'm not blaspheming by saying that. And that's not to say that Borelli played poorly. It's just that I think a lot of other people impacted the game more directly. And Borelli looks like he's wearing like half of a bulletproof vest under his shirt. I wonder if he's still got like a brace on that shoulder or something. But that's neither here nor there. I think Eder was good. I don't begrudge the start. I don't think he's done anything to be dropped either. And Ricardo Zacarias, I mean, I think that's the big battle right now is who partners Lucho. Who's that secondary scoring option? And it's hard to look past Zaka right now. 2 goals already. So a goal every other game. And getting into the right areas, showing his strength, as we'll talk about on his goal. And so him and Jag, it looks like, is kind of like the toss-up week in, week out, but everyone else pretty much picked themselves. Petr Petrovic able to start. And so that was nice to see. And he also gets on the score sheet, and I could see why Brian wanted him. And he punished Louisville with the third one. So, yeah, the lineup was good. And we'll just see what sticks.
Christian, your chance to respond to Mika's slander of Eder Borelli.
Not slander. I love me some Eder. Don't worry.
No, I mean, I'm fine with it because, I mean, the more she talks, the more he's going to go off on Friday if he plays.
It's
true. We know how this works.
Banger inbound.
By all means.
But no, I mean, like I don't think between the 3 of us there was anyone who was calling more for him to get some minutes than me. But Mika's absolutely right too in that, whether you look at it like quantitatively or qualitatively, I think he was one of the least impactful players on the match. And I think we didn't see the aggression that we're used to seeing from him. And to Mika's point, it may be because, he's still not 100%, as far as being ready to commit his body the way that he has in the past. So maybe that means, like, I don't know. It's hard as a manager because I would imagine that, like, if you don't feel like he's ready to commit his body 100%, then maybe he's not the guy you want on the field, because any given moment, he decides he doesn't want to, he feels like he's not able to go in for that challenge 100%, and that's a ball that goes into the net. So it's risky. And right now that left back spot it's shaky for us because Nick also has shown that he is, suspect back there at times. So it's almost a coin flip, I guess, and who impressed in practice this week, and hope that it carries on into match day. So I'm okay with all that, whether he starts or not. I think that until one of them puts in a full solid shift, that should probably be one of the first subs, in the match, depending on the way that they're playing each match. So I'm all right with that. And yeah, that second forward is a big question mark, also a big toss up, and maybe maybe that changes game, does change game to game depending on what the strategy is for this week. So, um, luckily enough, Zacharias is showing up this year, so we don't have to feel as nervous as maybe we would have at the beginning of the season if you told us, okay, it's going to be 50-50 between him and Jag each week. So yeah, I think that the squad looked good, and I'm excited again. I was getting kind of down in the dumps after the first 3 weeks, but I'm excited again.
I think we saw a similar shape to what we've played in the first 3 matches, but this is the most organized it felt, if that makes sense, in terms of, I think it's felt disjointed for different reasons at different points of different matches. And in this one, it felt like maybe the team is just like getting more used to the patterns, getting more used to knowing each other's movement and kind of understanding, okay, I know when I receive the ball in this area, I know to look for this guy looking for a pass or whatever. It all felt a little bit more connected. I think it was simplified a little bit by the fact that, hey, like, we know we're going to not have as much of the ball and we're going to play a little bit more direct and we're going to be, so I think it did simplify some of the decision making, which I know is like what we talked about last week of, like, I think right now we've got a lot of guys trying to make a lot of tough decisions. And in this game, I think we did simplify some of that in that, our midfield was not in there to do anything flashy, to do anything like crazy creative. They were in there to break up Louisville's play through the middle and then immediately find kind of that outlet pass, and if they played it long, if they played it, there was no pressure on them to do anything super intricate. And I think like getting back to basics in that way, like, was a big help for a lot of the guys in the team who were able to rely more on sort of like their instincts rather than trying to like problem solve their way through the game. It was kind of like, hey, I know exactly what my role is. I know, it was a little bit more simplified than what we had been doing. And I think this now lays like a good foundation for the team to work off of. We did have a big milestone in this match in that it was Yuma's 100th appearance in all competitions for the club. The second player ever to hit the Centurion mark for Locomotive behind Richie Ryan, who accomplished it last year.
I think he might be the third. I think Josue has 100.
Oh, did Josue hit 100?
I thought so, but I don't know if a big fanfare was ever made of it.
Which would be silly because, like, he's also like the leading scorer still.
Now I need to know. Oh yeah, Aron has played. He's played 107 games for us.
Goat. Anyway, sorry,
wow.
I didn't mean to.
So my bad. I Jag Erasure, like on behalf of apparently, I don't know why more wasn't made of that, because that seems like crazy. Like Richie, Yuma, and Jag, like those are the guys with over 100 appearances, and I think Gomez has more than anyone.
Right? I like, even if you take out the Open Cup matches, because we've only had 2 of those. So.
Yeah, we haven't made much of a dent in the Open Cup, so so I should start over. A big milestone in this match was Yuma became the 3rd Locomotive player to reach the milestone of 100, playing 100 matches for the club. And we got a question on Twitter from @JakeKanecki, which condolences, Jake, on the Casa Nissan flatbed challenge, by the way, if we didn't talk about that last week. But he said, with Yuma hitting the 100 match mark, does he go down as Locomotive's most important player of all time? I felt like he was before the milestone, and I hope he gets something like a statue or his kit hung up at the SWUP. I know that there's at least one person listening to this podcast now who's ready to crash their car in the San Antonio area.
Oh my God.
We love you, Harry. No, but guys, in terms of most important player, is Yuma in the conversation, and what's the sentiment as he hits 100 appearances for the club?
Well, I mean, obviously it's huge. I'm sure he feels absolutely honored to have worn the shirt 100 times. He loves the club. He loves the city. That much has always been obvious. Even when he's gone through dips in form, he's had controversy on the pitch, right? I mean, Yuma's a lightning rod for a lot of different things like that. But his transition from midfield to stalwart at the back for us for several seasons running now has been very impressive. And he's a big part of the club's culture, really. He's a fixture in this side, and it's just great that we've been able to. We have 3 Centurions. Like, we're a club in year 5, and I think that's amazing that we've been able to have these high quality players on our books as long as we have done. I mean, that's what builds the club's heritage and its history. And I totally see Jake's point about like having his kit hung up or something. I mean, I think he's one of, a handful of players that Eighth Notch have made a TIFO exclusively for, right? I mean,
yeah.
That's the kind of impact that he's had on El Paso Locomotive.
Maybe the only.
I think they've done Ketterer.
They did a Logan
and
one.
yeah,
Right.
Another big player, obviously.
I think Kiesewetter ended up on one at one. I think there was a Three Amigos one done in season 1 that was
Tragic.
Ketterer, Kiesewetter, and Velasquez, I think.
Yeah. Wow. Blast from the past.
Right?
But yeah.
If I speak.
But yeah, no, I mean, yeah, Yuma's a big player. I guess it depends on what you define as most important. I mean, he's certainly a huge player. I don't know if most important is what I'd say, but certainly understand what he's getting at there.
Yeah. Yeah, and a guy central to, like you said, central to the culture, central to the locker room, and a leader for sure. And he absolutely boils piss. So
You love to see it.
Christian, I mean, in terms of this actual match starting off, like so much of this after the last 2 matches, so much of this match felt like get a foothold in the game, don't concede in the opening 10 minutes. Like, and for, the wind, for like all the crowd, home opener for Louisville, like getting out of that initial stage of this game and really out of the first half hour without conceding felt like such a step in the right direction in terms of just like being solid, not conceding some like silly goal or something like that, like giving themselves that foothold in the game felt like really what set up, I guess, the ability to pull off a good result on the road.
Yeah, I mean, I'm on the record with us as saying, like, if Louisville doesn't score in the first 30 minutes, like, I almost don't care what happens in the next, because that'll be a step up for us so far this season. That's how down bad we'd been. Because, yeah, we were just conceding really poor goals early, and I think that's who we can't be this season. At least that's what we've shown so far, is we can't go down early, because then we struggle. So if that needs to be the milestone every game, then that's fair. Don't go down early and finish the first half strong and see what you can make of the second half. I think that's a perfectly reasonable like strategy to have consistently. So they did really well to limit their chances. I think Louisville finished the game with 2 shots on target. So in the first 30, they might not have had any at that point. So a really good performance from them to come out strong. I think that's what they need to continue doing. So I think past versions of this team have been okay with conceding early, but that doesn't seem to be who we are this year, and that's fine.
Yeah, you mentioned the shots on target, and I want to say the first shot for Louisville comes at 3. The first shot at target for Louisville comes at 3-0. Like Locomotive are already up, and it was the cross that like almost
From
kind of goes in or
Mushagalusa.
whatever. Yeah, Mushagalusa. It really wasn't a shot. I think the wind like carries it, and Diaz has to push it over the top of the bar. And then their second shot on target is the one like the point blank save by Diaz, and then the second shot comes off the post, and that was in the 68th minute. So yeah, I mean nothing in the first, like no shots on target in the first half for Louisville. And yeah, as you said, 2 in the game. Mika, I mean, in terms of like how that all played out, it did seem like Louisville had a little bit of a hand in it, in that they were really wedded to being direct against Locomotive despite the challenges they were having against the wind.
Yeah, and it's funny because the commentary team kept making like a big thing of the wind, and it's like, this is locomotive heritage. Like,
Yeah.
we play in like 30-mile-per-hour gusts like every Saturday, Wednesday, and the following Saturday actually.
Yeah.
So
We play in the shit 3 days a week.
truly, in dust storms and what have you. So that kind of did make me laugh because it was like, whatever. We were trying stuff with the wind actually. Like Navarro tries to crack one from like 35 yards, and it does actually dip. And it tries to go under the bar of Morton's goal, but he has to make a similar save that Benny did on Mushagalusa. So yeah, I think Louisville, like, that was an interesting choice to try and be so direct. And I think actually, I kind of went in on the team last time we spoke about how there's like been no counter pressing. Not the case in this game. When we would lose the ball, like, we were hunting impacts together. It was a lot more purposeful, I think, the counter pressing off the ball. And that doesn't mean that like we necessarily were like dominant in possession. Actually, far from it. I think this is like the first time in quite a while where we don't end up with most of the ball. But like we were controlling the game without having the ball, and that was really interesting and a really novel thing, I think, from this Locomotive side, and something that I think Brian, that he pulled out of the pragmatic book, I think, and it worked. But yeah, I think Louisville, they were, like you said, like trying to go direct, and it really wasn't working out because we were just very sharp, very compact in that kind of mid block. And then also, I mean, not to make excuses for them or anything, but like they were really missing a lot of folks. I mean, Brian Ownby is a big part of that attack. He strikes fear into every fullback in the league, I would say. But he gets himself sent off in the last match, so he was suspended. Dylan Mares, luckily for us, was not able to appear, still injured. Winder was missing, one of the Winders, I forget which one.
Josh Winder,
Josh Winder. And then like that whole back line, I mean, it was Sean Toch and rotation options, and I think his partner, whose name escapes me, I think it starts with like a Q, his name. Kawasmi, yes. He had a rough one.
Yeah.
And I think not just because of him, but because him and Toch, like, it just seems like they don't really have an understanding. We were able to feast on that, to be honest. So.
Yeah, I mean, well, let's get on to the first goal. So 38 minutes in, the one way forward, because Locomotive had only had maybe a couple of forays forward at that point. It was much more about controlling what Louisville were doing, playing as much of the game outside of the boxes as possible, basically. They had started to find, you mentioned the shot that Mark Navarro has from distance, and they kind of started to recognize that Navarro was occupying this pocket of space going forward on the right-hand side. And he wanders into this space again, kind of just outside of the 18-yard box, cuts back onto his left foot, which I think just kind of caught everybody out a little bit because everybody's expecting him to get to the byline and drill in a right-footed cross as he's wont to do. Checks back onto his left and curls the cross in towards the head of Lucho Solignac, who I mean, should get an assist for this goal in terms of the dummy that he pulls off, where he actually just ducks out of the way at the last second of the cross and allows it to drift inside of Morton's far post, giving Locomotive a 1-0 lead. So a little bit of a freak goal, little bit of a strained. Obviously it's not meant, like Navarro isn't shooting. It is a cross, but smart play too by Lucho to kind of give everybody the eyes and allow that sort of misdirection to play out.
So wait a minute. Do you think he means it, Phil? You think he means that dummy?
I think watching it back, it doesn't look like he's trying to make, because the header he would be trying to get on that is like a glancing header.
Yeah.
So in theory, he would be like sort of ducking to make that glancing contact. But he pretty deliberately, it just doesn't look like, the angles look all off in terms of like, if he's trying to make contact, he would get it like desperately wrong. And so I think Lucho is trying to get out of the way.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just curious because I'm kind of the persuasion that he did mean the run more than anything, because the run completely takes the defender with him. And at that point, Morton's unsighted, doesn't get across fast enough, and the ball just falls in, basically.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't think anyone knew that Mark Navarro could do that with his left foot, to be fair. And I think this was something that I remember seeing in preseason, is like that big switch right before the goal. Just like completely changing the point of attack. I think Louisville had problems with that in this game, and trying to reorient themselves. So by the time that they're able to get set, really it's too late and the ball's in the net. So yeah, fortuitous for sure, but good players make things like that happen. So what a way to open his account and to open the scoring on the road.
The way that it comes about, Christian, it feels like in one goal and maybe in one game, and how this thing played out, it felt like a lot of the luck that Locomotive got and a lot of the bounces, like all kind of coming like karmically due at once, like in one game, where this is the sort of thing that just doesn't happen in the first 3 games, whereas here, like, we reap the benefits of someone else's bad luck for once.
Yeah, and that made it really fun to watch, but also it makes me kind of like hesitant too about the future, because I think it's fair to say that all 3 goals were what's the word? I don't want to like overstate, but like, I guess lucky, is the best word for it. Obviously there's a good amount of work put in for them, but they all come off of either like a once in a blue moon move, like the Navarro goal with, Lucho just absolutely drawing Morton's eyes away from where the ball's going. Pater's goal, just a absolutely terrible pass.
Mm-hmm.
And Zacharias' goal coming off just a really boneheaded move by the Louisville defenders of letting the ball bounce to him there. So they all have some merit to them, but they are also off of really bad decisions bad decisions or just bad luck by Louisville. So made for a fun game, but it still leaves me with questions.
Sure. Well, let's talk about the Zacharias goal, because the timing of this goal, combined with the fact that it does immediately follow like a good chance that Louisville misses, it ends up in the hands of Benny Diaz, who goes long, like over the top. The ball bounces, as you said, Christian, which, cardinal sin of the defender of never let the ball bounce. The wind certainly probably played a part in like judging the flight, all that sort of stuff. It drifts and bounces in behind. Ricardo Zacharias does a really, really good job to hold off the defender, the challenge from the defender, and finishes smartly. I mean, we've seen one goal this season already from Ricky, like off a half volley. This is, I think, on the full volley. He doesn't take a touch before he takes this one, and just absolutely drills it in the bottom corner. A really smart finish from Zacharias, and I guess we've always kind of seen that Zacharias. It feels like he's at his best technically when he is taking his first touch by either like shooting or passing.
No, absolutely. That's just what I was going to say, is like he seems to be operating on a higher level when it's instinct and less thinking, less really dribbling on the ball. I think we've seen him have more difficulty like coming from a deep position on the wing, right? And having to decide, like, do I keep going? Do I pass? Do I try to beat the man? When he's in and around that box, like, he's lately pretty automatic, and I know we're talking about a small sample size here, but Zaka does seem to operate really well on instinct, and the technique is really good. These two strikes that he's had for Locomotive this season. So the strength as well. Clearly he's been hitting the weight room, holding off that defender who lets it bounce not once but twice. And it's just not good enough, to be honest. I'd be absolutely fuming if that was us, letting a ball bounce like that. And I mean, shout out Benny Diaz, making history with the assist. Maybe the best keeper in the league with his feet. And with the long passing, it's just outstanding. I mean, it's one thing to start off attacks or build-ups with the ball on the ground, but his long passing is really, really outstanding. I think there was a shout for like Logan having an assist some years back against New Mexico United. I don't know if that actually ever got recorded as one though. So Benny.
Oh, when he was up in the box and it fell. That was the Boehner equalizer. I think that.
Yeah.
Some contended that Logan should have gotten an assist.
Yeah. I think that's the one. The home run goal. But no, Benny gets this one for sure. And yeah, the whole thing is just outstanding. And I do agree with Christian that like these 3 goals that we score are like there's a lot of luck, but I think the luck is in the situations, and the bounces, but the finishes themselves are really, really good and just good technique.
You mentioned Benny Diaz and the passing. The numbers aren't as impressive in terms of like percentage in the game against Louisville because he is acting, I would say, a little bit more like he's making more clearances than he typically does in terms of like aiming passes for people downfield. But it was interesting to note that Benny Diaz is in the top 10 for in the league for passes completed.
We have a whole ass quarterback in net.
Yeah. Yeah. Keeping in mind we have played a game more, but Benny Diaz being in the top 10 of all players in USL for passes completed is something very unique, I would say, to his game. And I mean, Christian, the timing of this goal as well as like how it comes about with Zacharias scoring just before halftime, this feels like the sort of goal that Locomotive have been conceding this season rather than scoring in terms of just like bad timing goals. And this one, it felt like that this, even maybe more so than the third, was like already a bit of a decider in terms of like taking that momentum into halftime at 2-0 up instead of 1-0.
Yeah, and you have to hope, right? Because, I mean, again, at the beginning of this match, still very nerve-wracking, until the game is over. So, going into a cynical mindset, it's like, if we're up 2-0, that means it's going to, like, hurt even more if we don't win.
Sure.
So, that can also be kind of a scary thing going into the locker room at halftime, too, if you let it be. So, credit to the players and to the staff for making sure that you say we're up 2-0, so keep it, do whatever you have to do to maintain that lead, and they did.
Mika, I mean, this game really did feel to like halftime was, a big deciding point in that Louisville makes 3 changes at halftime. So clearly, Danny Cruz. Yeah. Danny Cruz not happy with what went on in the first 45, obviously down 2-0, makes a bunch of changes at halftime. Could have been, they're looking for that early goal after halftime to kind of get back into the game. And again, it, almost symmetry with the beginning of the game. It felt like Locomotive's task then was get out of that first 10 minutes of the second half without conceding. And you're more or less like kind of guaranteed to go on and win if you can just manage that initial emotional reaction out of the locker room.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like we've been playing the game in quarters almost. So that first half of the second half, if you can win that, you can go on to win the whole thing. And that's what we did. I think more importantly than Louisville trying to, inject some kind of reaction into this with the changes is that we did not make a change at halftime for the first time ever this season. Brian Clarehout electing to go with the same 11 that scored 2 goals in the first half. Can't really argue with that, right? The boys that were on the pitch were performing. And so he gives that continuity to those players. And maybe that has a little bit to do with the fact that they have had a week's rest. I mean, wow, what a concept. And they're able to continue on. So I thought that was really interesting that we were able to just roll with that and then make the changes as it became more about game management. And the second half was a lot more of the same, of us just really controlling space, not allowing too many dangerous situations. And I think Louisville's first shot, you might have said it at the top of the show, doesn't come until the second half. First shot on target, which is shocking for a team that has Cameron Lancaster, Mushagalusa, like players like this, really big goal scorers. And like you said, that Mushagalusa one is like fouled off basically, and forces Benny Diaz into pushing it over the bar. So it was really a masterclass in controlling the game without necessarily controlling the ball. And to be fair, Brian has never said it's about controlling the ball. He said it's about control, right, whatever form that takes. So we saw that, I think.
You mentioned Cameron Lancaster, and I mean, obviously one of the most dangerous players, one of the best strikers in USL history, let alone like in USL right now, and finishes the match with 24 touches and 2 shots, both of which were blocked, which is just like an unbelievable testament to the way that Locomotive set up. They clearly were not going to allow Lancaster to hurt them, and didn't. Like in game planning for that, they really did effectively eliminate him as a threat in the game.
And I don't know if this is Lancaster's personality on the pitch. Phil, you might know more than I, but he was talking to the referees a lot. And he's just always struck me as a player that lets his boots do the talking, if you will. I mean, sure, he's always scoring insane goals. But he had a lot to say to the officials, which I thought was funny because I thought that this game was officiated very, very pro Louisville, if I do say so myself. Probably could be down a man after whoever that was on a yellow card raked the back of Lucho's Achilles, but
was Mogul.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, I thought that was interesting that they had Cameron Lancaster, one of the best strikers of this league ever, kind of talking to the referee and real upset. So I don't know if that's usual for him or not, but I thought it was interesting.
Spurs in it. No, I'm just kidding. Manny, we love you. It's not. No, So yeah, no, it's worth mentioning though that like that control, as you said, coming out of halftime and across the second half, because it's not like it. I think everyone was waiting for that like that big storm of Louisville pressure that that Locomotive were going to have to weather, and it just kind of never came. Like in terms of them really putting Locomotive, on the back foot and feeling like it's only a matter of time. Which they do to clubs over and over again. Like they make it feel inevitable at times. And I think the credit to Locomotive is that at no point did it feel like they were, in true danger of conceding and letting Louisville back in the game, which is, huge credit to the boys. Christian, you mentioned obviously the big moment of the second half for Locomotive is Petar Petrovic's goal, which put the icing on the cake for Locomotive. But the way it comes about, it is a terrible back pass from Louisville, which Petrovic is waiting in the space, sees the opportunity before everybody else. Everyone in purple is a little bit flat-footed, and Petar is just like hunting, looking for that opportunity. But as he moves forward into the box again, kind of gives Morton the eyes, and it's a good finish down low into the corner. Interesting in that he was over to the subs in his initial celebration, but then eventually makes his way over to the boss, and there was a big embrace like between him and Brian. For a guy coming back from a long injury layoff, hasn't been able to make his mark in maybe the way that he imagined his career going. For him to open his account in his full debut, in terms of first match he started for Locomotive, still feels significant for Petrovic to get a goal in a game, despite the sort of fortuitous circumstances surrounding it.
Yeah, no matter who it is, no matter who we've talked to, they've always said, especially if that's the kind of player they are, if they're a player that scores goals, then it doesn't matter how lucky you are if they go in or whatever, as long as they go in. And for a lot of players, that's that's all they need. He probably had the best sleep of his, however many weeks or months that he's been here, after scoring that goal, even if it was in a hotel bed, I think that as long as the balls are going in, it doesn't matter how. And I think it's important for anyone, especially with the way that this season has been going. At the Detroit press conference, like, these guys were down. They were very visibly down, and so I think that this kind of match, and especially for those who could be involved on the scoreline, it's just what the doctor ordered for him.
Well, that kind of leads into the next question, Mika. I mean, so Locomotive 3-0 winners on the road at Louisville, and at Fernie_Elias on Twitter asks, he stated that he had to watch the match about 10 hours later because of his daughter Noe's birthday party, but he finally got to watch the match. How much of an attitude change and a momentum swing is this win against Louisville for this squad?
Oh my gosh, look no further than the locker room scenes that Locomotive posted today on socials. The boys were absolutely loving it. And look, I think the more cynical among us could say, okay, we're getting a little carried away. No, like, it's been a tough start. New coach, new players. Andrew Aguiluz is out with an ACL. Like, we've been going through it. And
yeah.
I just love seeing these seeds of the boys really enjoying themselves. And I think that momentum swing, I mean, that's hard to say. Obviously, remains to be seen. But I think that that's a huge feather in the cap of this Locomotive side that are trying to come to grips with a season where they've already played more games than anyone else in USL Championships. So to go to Louisville's famed Lynn Family Stadium, take all 3 points, score 3 goals, not allow a goal, after what was a horrible start, really, to the season, and you go and do that against the Eastern Conference champions, it's going to be huge. But at the same time, like, Brian's job will be to not make sure that doesn't get blown out of proportion, right? And that it's channeled into motivation and getting better and seeing what we can do better and how we can make results like this more sustainable and more frequent. Because, you know, it's not like everything in this game was perfect. I mean, Louisville, they did have some chances, you know, save that if that post isn't there, maybe we're talking about a 3-1. We could be more clinical too. Lucho probably should score. He's in open space at that post, that chance he has in the second half. So, you know, little things here and there to tweak for sure, to work on, to look at in video. And we'll have some more time to do that. The boys are back in El Paso before they head back out to Tulsa. So, momentum swing. We'll see an attitude change. I think it just tells the boys that they can win. They can win. They can beat good sides in this league. And most of all, I think it'll really lend, I don't know if this is the right word, but like legitimacy, I guess, to the Brian Clairhout era, right? And you see him saying in that video, like, I told you guys, I told you today was going to be a good day and that we were going to come in here and do our thing. And so that's got to be huge for the gaffer as well.
Along those lines, Christian, I mean, it does feel like, and at Der Schattenwolf also asked this on Twitter, asking, like, was the win more of an improvement on things that already went well, or more because things finally connected together that didn't before? I mean, along those lines of what Mika said, building that confidence, it didn't feel like anything was being done like radically different in this game than what we did in the first three. And it was that maybe it is just this like level of familiarity and confidence that was being built throughout this 90 minutes.
Yeah, maybe. I also think too, again, small sample size, single game sample size literally here from our wins, but
yeah,
like, this was the first time where we played this direct. You know, we didn't have most of the ball this match, and for a lot of, you know, the longtime fans of this team, that's something very different. So if Brian decides that's what he wants to do, then it's gonna look a little different, and it might look a little like uglier at times. But honestly, you know, does it at the end of the day, like Brian's said since the beginning, it's the only stat that matters is who scored more goals. Doesn't matter how many passes you completed in the end. Doesn't matter how much possession you had. Any of that. So, which is funny because, you know, we've absolutely like shitted on opponents that we've played against, that have won games and completed like 150 passes in the match.
New Mexico, 78 passes. I'll never forget that. 78 passes. Absolute terrorism.
But I mean, you know, at this point, you know, if that's what gets you the wins and the goals, then you've got to take it. So, I think that it is a possibility that might be us at our best, is playing that kind of football. But also, it could have been a lot of things, you know, the wind and all that sort of stuff. So, small sample size. But I do think that there was something to how we played just a tiny little bit different. You know, he didn't go out there and reinvent the wheel or anything, but just a little bit different philosophically from the first three matches, and it just happened to pay off this week.
With that being said, I mean, we do have a game against Tulsa coming up, and in many ways, this next match is as important in terms of deciding whether this is a turning point or not. And I feel like that was a conversation we had a lot last season. So I'm hoping we can stay away from that and build some actual momentum here. But we'll be back to talk a little bit of a random question, and then onto a Tulsa preview after a quick break. All right, welcome back. Guys, I wanted to talk real quick. We got a question from a day one listener of Seriously Loco, Charles Fenwick at CL Fen. I'm not really sure how to
Fenwick
on Twitter. So Charles asks if you have time for a random curiosity question, and it piqued my curiosity as well, because I was interested in your guys' answer in a similar way to a Christian's question. What are y'all's preferred vantage points for watching a match at Southwest University Park, or the SWUP as he refers to it, and or in general? And to go along with that, he included a little bit of context. He said, the question came to mind last week when I was at Jacksonville's U.S. Open Cup match and reflecting on the various venues that the club has played at. For what it's worth, my season tickets when Jacksonville Armada played in a baseball stadium were roughly equivalent to the first row of Section 204 in the SWUP, that is like elevated behind the goal. Last week's match was at a local university's track/soccer stadium where the club played its 2017 NASL and 2018 NPSL seasons. At that venue, there is only one tall set of stands along one touchline. There, I prefer to be high up, about in line with the 12-yard spot, like the penalty spot, or top of the 18-yard box. So a little bit of context from Charles there, but what is your guys' favorite vantage point at the SWUP to watch games?
Yeah, well, when we're covering the games, obviously we don't have a choice. We have to be in the press box, and so near side, like section 105, 8th notch side, goals and corners are hard to see, but otherwise it's a decent vantage point. When I'm kind of like in civilian mode, shall we say, and watching the game just as a fan, my work actually has season tickets on the second level of the stands that are parallel to the Durango Street entrance. So that kind of like second level that you just look directly over like the center line. And I think tactically that is definitely like a great vantage point for watching the game, because you can see everything unfolding. The only thing that's really obscured is like the farthest corner flag, which is just obscured pretty much everywhere but on TV because of the wall, because it is a baseball stadium, unfortunately. But yeah, I do love just being like right smack dab at the center field line, but high up so that I can see everything and see all the action. So yeah.
Christian, what's your spot?
Yeah, I mean, if I'm ever there, not, on seriously Loco business, I'm just happy to be there, honestly. I don't really I don't really have a preference, as long as I'm in there and I get to watch the game, I'm okay with it. So
I guess like I watched all but like 4 matches from the press box, like there in person. This may be a hot take. No, I don't think, actually it's not a hot take at all. I can't wait. One of the main reasons that I really want a soccer specific stadium is because the press box is in a horrible spot. Like, all things considered, it should be about on halfway. It should be like a little bit elevated, Yeah. And watching from like behind one of, like sort of off center behind one of the goals is like not my favorite, but I have fond memories of watching the games like from there. And then obviously like 105 is an amazing place to watch a game as an intense supporter and as part of the culture of what's happening in 8th Notch and happening in 105. It's a terrible place to watch the action of what's happening, at least in the first row. Like, if you are like right down in front, not good. Higher up in 105, like what was that? The
top shelf.
The top shelf. The top shelf like has a good, I would say they have like a decent vantage point. Right down at field level is brutal. Right behind the goal. You're not seeing anything. Dude, down there.
In the dugout during COVID times was brutal. It's like, what's happening? That was brutal.
He's got a handful of sunflower seeds, like leaning up on the front step, just like, yeah.
Pretty
anyways.
much.
about to go pinch hit. So no, yeah. No, I thought that was an interesting question, and Charles always comes through with like the good questions as well. And it's always good to hear from him. And glad that Jacksonville Armada is still kicking around and doing bits in the Open Cup. So yeah, good to hear from them. The Seriously Loco match preview. Tulsa. We got a preview. This is now, as of this year, the Richie Ryan derby. Richie, now an assistant coach with Tulsa. It did catch me off guard the first time I was watching a Tulsa match and they celebrated a goal and Richie ran down the sideline. That hurt a little bit, I'll say. I felt that. Caught me off guard. But Tulsa off to kind of, I don't want to say a similar start because it is different. They have a draw, a loss, and a win so far in their games played. So sort of a spotty start to the season. They're coming off a 3-0 win over Loudoun. They have actually a game against Pittsburgh tomorrow night. So we'll be able to see sort of another side of Tulsa, and they'll be on short rest before we come to town. So a little bit of an interesting dynamic with this one. But how are you guys feeling ahead of Tulsa? I mean, I know we talked about it in the Louisville game as like this game kind of decides like whether or not Louisville was a turning point. So how are you guys feeling about heading to Tulsa, particularly knowing that they're coming off this 3-0 win over a Loudoun team that was in decent form?
Yeah, this is another one of those teams that we have like a weirdly decent record against, if I'm not mistaken. Have we ever lost to them?
3 wins, 2 draws.
Yeah, I don't think so. We've scored quite a few goals. Of course, that's come in different eras of this Locomotive side, as it were. But yeah, Friday night game. That's kind of a weird one. It's one less day of rest than we would like. I don't know really what to make of this Tulsa side because there's been a lot of change. I mean, new goalkeepers betting in, a new manager, Blair Gavin, very young, only 34 years old, and I believe this is his first head coaching position. Has been an assistant in USL and in MLS, but he's the big guy, so maybe Tulsa's in their Hutch era. I don't know. But they've made some decent transfers. Marcus Epps being one of them, already has 2 goals for them, so doing what he was brought in to do. Rushi, the Spanish center back, Noah Powder from Indy 11 has come in, Rashid Tete. So, I mean, they've got some pieces here, but also they've let go of what's his name? The goalkeeper that I really like. I should probably know his name.
Oh, Sean Lewis.
Sean Lewis, yeah, when he went to Indy last year, and then I figured if it wasn't going to work out there, they'd bring him back, but they did not. Sean Lewis is in USL League One now with One Knoxville, but yeah, and then Rodrigo da Costa, which we always know he can be a difference maker, the Brazilian. So, yeah, been a lot of turnover at Tulsa, and I don't know what to make really of them smashing Loudoun United. Every shot went in, and it's just kind of like maybe a return to the mean, return to normal, because I think people were like kind of shook by what Loudoun was doing, but maybe they're just exposing like who's going to have a down year, like the Memphis is among us. So it's hard to draw any conclusions really about this Tulsa side, but for the most part, I feel okay going into this. I think confidence should be high.
They got outshot and outpossessed by Loudoun. So I am a little, but again, it's one of those things, like nothing that Tulsa's done this year has like shown me that I should be buying in necessarily, but they also like are hanging around, like they've been in all of the games that they've played in. Like they haven't gotten like blown away by anybody. It took Legion scoring like a couple of worldies and like a last minute goal to get the win over them. So I don't know, like it feels a little bit like a strange team that's tough to judge, and maybe that's coming from a podcast covering a team that is in a similar moment of like it's hard to tell exactly where Locomotive is at like after their first 4 games, where it's like you can't write them completely off, but we're not sure like where their ceiling is yet.
Yeah, I would say that that's pretty fair.
So I think that, with a team like with a coach, with a coaching like pedigree, with Gavin coming from Phoenix, and Richie Ryan being who he is, that there's always the possibility of them surprising you. It feels like with that kind of staff that, at least mentally they're always going to keep themselves in it. And so far with their 3 games, they are leading the league in goals. Like them and Monterey have scored the most goals in the season so far. So that all that has to be in the back of their minds and Locomotive minds also. So coin flip, one of those coin flip matches, and hopefully it lands on our side. And then I was just looking to see if that new signing that they made, that really young kid, had played, but it doesn't look like he has. I don't know what their plans are for him. I just know that was their last the last big thing we heard from them. Was that a Cole Turner, I think was his name, signing that they made?
Cole Turner. Wait, did we also have what was the Philadelphia guy that we got on loan a couple of seasons? Is that Cole Turner also?
Oh, really?
No, I think you're thinking of the guy they signed from New York Red Bulls, right?
Yeah. No, Worth, not Turner. Yeah, his name was Worth. Man.
Because Cole Turner, the Locomotive legend, is at Loudon.
Locomotive legend, Cole Turner.
No, yeah, our guy's name was the Tulsa guy's name was Worth. I don't know why I pulled out Cole Turner. That's a deep cut, man.
If you know,
he was good for us, to be fair.
He was.
Like, he wasn't like unbelievable, but he was good. I thought he was solid.
Yeah.
Wonder where Cole Turner's at now.
He's at Loudon.
He's at Loudon?
Yeah, I think he's a Maryland native, so.
Oh, maybe that's why I said it. Maybe I saw his name on on their roster when I was looking at that Tulsa match. Maybe that's why it came up.
Could have been. Man. Oh, they got him at center back. Unbelievable. Wow. Okay. Well,
that's
Cole
what
Turner.
We did wrong.
He's still only 21, to be fair. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think whenever I think of this Tulsa side, I mean, Marcus Epps, I think, is like, in terms of danger men, like Marcus Epps is up there, but Rodrigo da Costa is just like, it's been how many years he's been at Tulsa, and it feels like he scores every other game, like, since he's been there, basically.
And he's well in his prime. He's 29, so.
Yeah. He is like who I worry about. The one thing I'll say is that I think the fact that they don't have like great shot volume, even for the amount of goals, like they have 11 shots on target and 6 goals. Like that conversion rate is not sustainable over the course of an entire season. And so I do feel good about like that their shot volume is not huge, which suggests that like we could limit what they do in terms of shot creation. And then, ideally that leads to them scoring less. Who knows? They only needed 3 shots on target to score 3 against Loudon. So maybe they are just like masters of efficiency. I like to think that we could probably have some, have some say in whether or not they score. This was their first home game. And they did light up the scoreboard, so they get us at home. This is part of a 3-game stretch at home for them. This Pittsburgh game's at home as well. So, hopefully we can make it miserable a little bit like ours was. Pittsburgh, certainly not the test that it once was. even as recently as like last year, Pittsburgh is looking pretty human, and by pretty human I mean potentially not a playoff team in the East, which is kind of crazy to say
Wow.
of a Bob Lilly team. But yeah, a little bit of a strange season so far for the Riverhounds, but they play Tulsa. They play Tulsa tomorrow
Tuesday night?
at 8 p.m.
Tuesday night match? That's so bizarre.
That's such a ghetto schedule. Saturday, Tuesday, and then Friday. Not even Saturday. Friday.
What is happening? What is actually happening with
I
the
bet it
schedule?
has to do with minor league baseball starting.
Yep, probably.
The ghetto.
Truly. Well and truly. And that's about to be a reality at El Paso, at Southwest University Park as well.
Yep.
Crying.
Equally mudded.
Forever. Yeah.
But not as mudded as Southwest University Park's field. Who is that guy who started beef with Locomotive in year one? That reporter from El Paso who was at a Chihuahuas game bitching about what the outfield looked like.
Oh
I
my
don't
God.
remember his name, and that's probably for the best.
Yeah, probably. That was funny. That was like the first few episodes of Seriously Loco. We were flaming that dude.
Oh my God.
What a time. This is Seriously Loco heritage. So we did get the one question. So obviously Tulsa, a little bit of a wild card coming into this. Certainly if you're interested in getting a better look at Tulsa, watch them tomorrow night. Tuesday night. But we did get a question from @MarkPonce on Twitter. What adjustments do Locomotive need to make for Tulsa? Do you guys think that the approach needs to be different in any way from what we did against Louisville?
Curious, Christian, what you think. You go first.
It's hard because I don't know anything about how Tulsa plays other than the numbers, but I think that, I don't know. I think that this game might need to maybe not be as direct, just because I think that this Tulsa team is going to be a little bit more experienced than the Louisville team that we played because of all those injuries that they had. So or maybe they won't be. I don't know. Maybe I don't know if they're going to rotate for tomorrow's match or our match. I don't know where we're going to see the stronger side. So it's hard to say because you have no idea who's going to be on the field, I guess. But I mean, it's kind of like the easy answer, but if it's not broken, don't fix it. So just come out and do what we did on Saturday, I guess, is what I would say.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing like egregious that I think needs to be fixed. I think, I keep referring back to our conversation before Louisville and how we thought that all the problems were being addressed. They just hadn't all been addressed at once to then lead to 3 points. I think Louisville certainly did. Tulsa, I just think that they have more players where the play really goes through them. So like DaCosta and Epps, I think with Louisville, the threat was, it's a team game. Like Louisville can really hurt you from anywhere. Whereas Tulsa probably are going to spam the ball to more of just the two of them, I would think, especially DaCosta. I think everything goes through him. I think he's kind of like their Roro, actually. Like now that I think about it, like that kind of a player for Tulsa. And he's provided that continuity for Blair Gavin's side, which has changed quite a lot. So perhaps a little bit more man marking, actually, rather than just managing space. But yeah, I'm kind of just basing that on like what I know of Tulsa in the past. I have not watched them exclusively that much this season, or extensively, I should say. But it does seem like they play similar systems to us, a lot of 4-4-2, sometimes 4-2-3-1. So ostensibly, if we're shaping up similarly, it might be easy to put numbers on certain players and try to mark them out of the game. So But yeah, no, I think for the most part though, if we just go into the game with the same attitude of look, we're on the road, like play with no pressure, play with no fear. You don't have to fear anyone. You just beat one of the best teams in USL. You can do it again. So, fingers crossed for no training injuries or anything like that, obviously. I mean, the club did confirm what we reported earlier about Andre Aguiluth and the season-ending injury, the ACL tear, which is so heartbreaking for him. So, I mean, things like that as well just need to not happen. So, yeah.
You mentioned the play for Tulsa going through certain players, and so it got me curious and looking at the amount of touches that players took in the win against Loudoun and where the play like went through for Tulsa. And you mentioned Epps. Marcus Epps took more touches than any outfield player for Tulsa. The second most touches for Tulsa in that game, Roger Bonnet, the Spanish left back, who plays on the same side as Epps. And the third most was Jorge Corrales, the Cuban center back, who plays on the left side next to Bonnet in defense. So that left side was getting spammed like far more than the right, in terms of the concentration of like the ball stayed on the left-hand side of Tulsa, basically up and down the field. And so I would look for like that link between Bonnet and Epps as like their primary way of playmaking. The ball went to their central midfielders about half as much as Epps. So they definitely played down the wings like way more against Loudoun than through the middle. And DaCosta actually he's still super involved, but fewer touches than either of them. And obviously sort of not a focal point, but more of the guy finishing the move than being a part of it in the buildup necessarily. So yeah, just an interesting, like you mentioning where the play was concentrated. It's like, yeah, it does for Tulsa. It does seem like that left side is where they focus a lot of their possession. So it'll be interesting to see. And if that's the case, obviously that would be targeting, Mark Navarro and Kostitian's side of our kind of like 4-4-2 out of possession. So, yeah, interesting little matchup that will develop, I think, over the course of the 90 minutes. And almost the question becomes like, can Navarro deal with Apps, and can Navarro keep Bonnet from getting too adventurous in terms of like, can we keep him pinned back a little bit? Because he's occupied with trying to defend Mark in front of him. So interesting. Because our attacks, I would say, go down. Mark went against Louisville, went far more down the right than the left. So we could see one side of the field completely wore out if it's Tulsa's left and our right where the ball is the whole game. That one sideline's just going to get beat up.
Oh my.
But yeah, no, interesting stuff. And we'll see how it plays out. I'll definitely be watching I'll be watching Tulsa take on Pittsburgh tomorrow night, because that'll be one to keep an eye on. Scouting
for us.
Yeah. I think you gotta, especially for these teams in the East, it's like they're a little bit of wild cards sometimes when they come into contact with a real footballing league like the USL's Western Conference.
Sure.
Yeah, so tune in if you're interested, and yeah, in terms of stuff going on Friday night, we're gonna try to put together our watch along of the game in Tulsa. So that should be fun. Like I said, it'll be on Twitter, Twitch, and YouTube. and Facebook. I think also it goes to a lot of places. We'll have the stream going. Hopefully it'll be fun. And we'll be able to watch a Locomotive win on Friday night. And if you're looking for more of the podcast, definitely look on any of your favorite podcast player apps or platforms. And if the platform allows you to review, we'd really appreciate that because it'll just allow the podcast to appear in front of more Locomotive fans. And we're on Patreon as well. Patreon.com/SeriouslyLoco. And for that, a couple of bucks a month gets you like early access to all of the writing and stuff. And keep an eye out for tactical takeaways from yours truly on the Louisville match sometime this week before they take on Tulsa. But other than that, guys, I guess that about wraps us up.
It does indeed.
That'll do it.
All right. Well, hope everyone has a good remainder of your week. Luckily, it's not a 3-game week for Locomotive, so we can all breathe easy. But we're all definitely looking forward to what we hope is another big Locomotive win on Friday to keep this train rolling. But until then, stay loco.